You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where we help you make more money. That's the mission. How do we help you make more money? Today on the show, we're talking with a serial entrepreneur and doctor, Dr. Erin Nance. Dr. Nance is a board-certified surgeon and multimedia powerhouse at the intersection of medicine, media, and entrepreneurship. With a TikTok account ranking in the top 1% of all creators and her podcast, The Medical Detectives, in the top 0.5% globally, she's redefining how credible health information is shared. Erin secured a six-figure book deal, is developing television projects, and is the founder of Feel Better Health, the first health-focused social media platform, all while running a thriving private practice. She's a force making medicine more human, more trusted, and more visible across all platforms. Erin, thanks so much for taking the time to join me on the show.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I feel like I always have a lot of pots on the stove or whatever the saying is. But I love that, my baseline expertise is being a doctor, and there is an evolution of how I am providing that care to people.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid baseline to start with, Erin. My baseline
there are other paths that don't involve 12 years of school and training and being on call for 36 hours at a time straight, but sure.
Yeah. Do you find that there's a lot of entrepreneurial thinking doctors, or do those personalities typically clash?
I was raised by physicians who were in a private hospital. And so every physician that I trained with had their own practice. And I guess I just never thought of owning your own practice as being a business owner until I did it myself. And to tell you how wildly things have changed, just within the past, I would say 15 years. So when I was in training, all of my mentors had their own practice. They hung their own shingle, right? They managed their practices. When I graduated fellowship, I was only one out of 750 orthopedic surgeons to start their own practice straight out of fellowship. So Now the number is 70% of all physicians are employed by either a hospital system or a private equity group.
No kidding.
Which is an absolutely crazy statistic. If you told me that was what I remember when I was an intern, there was one orthopedic surgeon who came on staff at the hospital, and we were kind of like, ooh, what happened to that guy? What went wrong?
Interesting. So the path to you was almost always entrepreneurial, and now it's kind of shifting the opposite way.
My path to becoming an entrepreneur was one that I was not expecting. I really did it out of necessity. My job coming out of fellowship my job offer was rescinded because I asked what the call schedule was like. I was 9 months pregnant when I had that job offer rescinded. And I asked, I said, there's no provisions in this contract about how many days of call I'll be taking. And when I asked them to put some boundaries around the call schedule, they told me that the position no longer exists. So I in essence, was
it no longer exists for people who ask questions.
Correct. Absolutely. So I was really forced to become an entrepreneur. There were no openings. No one was retiring. And I, was from New York City. My husband worked in New York City. I said, I am staying in New York City. And the only way that I could do that was to make my own practice.
That's wild to me. So even as a doctor, there was still not job availability.
Oh, no. I mean, New York has to be the most competitive job market for physicians that exists. However, it is one of the least well-paying market for physicians. You could make probably twice as much if you want to be the orthopedic surgeon in, Des Moines, because they understand the supply and demand, right? There's way too many physicians who want the lifestyle of New York City and live in New York City, so therefore they don't have to pay competitive salaries if you are looking to, go on staff at a hospital system.
Wow. So what was the time frame between you no longer have this job offer and I guess I'm starting my own practice?
So that happened in, I would say, May of 2015. My daughter was born at the end of July in 2015. And I remember it like as clear as crystal. I had a colleague come visit me to visit the baby and see how I was and the baby. And he said, "How are things going?" And I go, "It's awful. I'm the most overqualified, unemployed person I know. And I missed out on the whole cycle of applying for new jobs. Everything's awful." And he goes, "You're in a great spot." I'm like, "What are you smoking? Are you crazy?" I go, this is the worst case scenario." He goes, "No, you don't. You could start your own practice." I go, "No one starts their own practice anymore. How could I do that?" He goes, "Listen, malpractice is 50% off the first year. You can sublease space from someone. You can sublease somebody's staff." And the more and more I thought about it, I said, why wouldn't I do this? Like, why wouldn't I create a life where I was in control of when I wanted to be on call and what holidays I wanted to work and how many days a week I wanted to see patients and how long I could see patients for, not 5 minutes. I could see patients for an hour if I wanted to. And once I made that decision, I want to say that was September. Technically, Nance MD was incorporated by November, and I saw my first patients in January. So that is probably world record time to getting privileges, to getting set up with, health insurers, contracts, and all that. But for me, that happened in the span of about 4 months.
And what was the clinic for when you opened?
Orthopedic surgery, specifically hand surgery. That's my subspecialty.
Okay. So when you start a business like this, like, do you have to have an MD to be able to start like a surgical facility or center, or can you be a private entrepreneur and hire a doctor? Or like, what does that initial process look like, and how do you start bringing patients in the door?
So in order to form a PC, which is the company structure for a business for doctors, you must be a doctor, either an MD or a DO. And this is fascinating because when I went to go apply for a business loan, I couldn't get a single business loan because I had no work history. Even though I had been a resident for 6 years, in the eyes of a bank, I had no work history. So for me, I'm, fortunate to have a partner, who in essence really floated the beginning of the business, to be able to get the lease. You have to prepay your malpractice. An orthopedic surgeon's malpractice is $100,000 a year. Okay, that's $100,000 before you ever see a patient. All right. In addition to, signing, you may have to sign long-term leases, the overhead, the electronic health record. So I understand why I was only one out of 750 physicians to do that. In addition to the lag time between seeing a patient, performing the care, and then being reimbursed for the care, right? That can be a 3 to 12 month revenue cycle to wait for collections. So unless you are in dermatology or plastic surgery where you are off the bat collecting upfront cash payments, it is really, really hard for someone to start a practice, which is why most people, they may join a large group or a hospital system, and then they think that they're just going to take their patients with them, but they are in for a rude awakening if they think that they are going to be able to bring those same patients with them. You really have to build your own personal brand and awareness for what you do.
Well, like you said, it makes sense that a lot of people weren't going that route. They're probably not super eager after you just wrapped up school and have 6 figures or multiple 6 figures in student loan debt. You're not eager to go jump into more debt to drop a $500,000 on opening up their own practice. Like, well, may as well go work somewhere for a while.
Yeah, it's honestly cost prohibitive at this point. And it's a shame because, as I said, I was trained by an entire generation of entrepreneurial doctors. And one of the biggest barriers is this whole revenue cycle, fee collections with insurance. And what happened, this is kind of boring, but in the 1980s when managed care came in, right, you had your Cigna, you had United Healthcare. What they told doctors was, hey, if you join our network, right, you will never have to worry about finding patients, right? We've got hundreds of thousands of patients. And because you're in our network, you will never be lacking for patients. But what they did was they took the fee structure power. They said, well, we're going to determine how much your service is worth. So before in the 80s, if I did a carpal tunnel surgery, I would bill Cigna. I would say it's $4,000 for this carpal tunnel surgery, and Cigna would pay me $4,000. Now, as an in-network provider, Cigna determines how much they're paying me for that carpal tunnel surgery. So just to give you a sense of the reimbursement structure for physicians, in the past 25 years, our reimbursement for the same procedure has decreased by 30%.
Wow.
What other industry does your reimbursement decrease not only year after year, but cumulatively 30% in 20 years? So when people ask, well, why are doctors seeing so many patients and they only have 5 minutes? It's because they have to see so many more patients just to make the same amount that they did last year, not even accounting for the increases in overhead and inflation.
And the increases in insurance cost to the consumer.
Correct.
It's not 30% lower because we're paying 30% less. I pay more every damn year, it seems like, for insurance that covers less and less things. It's like, how do I pay so much? I get really fired up about this conversation because every time I have to actually use my insurance for something, and then I still have to pay out of pocket, I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for medical insurance so that the time when I actually have to use it, I have to pay another $1,500 out of pocket just to be able to like make sure that I don't have like cancer or something like that. Like, this seems insane to me. It's the most backwards, messed up system, but it makes sense if the insurance companies are the ones controlling literally every part of the transaction at this point.
Correct. They are a closed loop system. So they are the ones collecting the money, distributing the money, denying payment of the money. And doctors honestly made this kind of deal with the devil back in the 80s when they allowed managed care to, take over that aspect, when in reality, they never had a problem with finding patients. Okay. That was never the issue to begin with.
They gave up security power. They gave up freedom for security.
And I will tell you that I have been an out-of-network provider my entire career, not because I take joy in charging patients, thousands of dollars for the procedure. I was never let into the network to begin with because I was a solo private doctor, and Cigna said, we don't need you. We don't want you. So I could never get in the network. Then once they invited me into the network, when they said my contract was, we will pay you $87 to see a patient as a new patient for a surgical consultation. I said, are you insane? Who would ever choose? And for the patient, again, they have no idea. They have no idea what this back and forth is on the back end. They just, their concern is their health, which is also the concern of the doctors as well, is their health. But what we're trying to do is just get fairly compensated for the work that we've already done.
Yeah. It's a crazy, messed up system. Do you think that you obviously have several entrepreneurial ventures that are kind of contained within the healthcare world. Are there any, I don't know, is there hope here? Like, have we gone too far down this messed up system where now we're just we're going to be suffering the consequences of terrible healthcare for the next couple of decades? Is there anything being done or that could be done from an entrepreneurial perspective that would help decrease some of these costs or make things at least more transparent? Like that's the most annoying thing to me, is just that I pay my monthly insurance. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, so we've always taken care of our own insurance, so it's expensive. And then when I go to use it, I think I'm paying this, and then I pay the copay at the doctor's office or whatever. But then like 4 months later, I get a bill in the mail that's for like $1,200 for a visit that like they didn't even use a test machine. I don't even understand what they're charging me for. It's like, what is going on? How is this so hyperinflated, completely non-transparent, and hurts the consumer for using the thing that they should be able to use whenever they want to use it because they're paying for it every month? Like it's the most backwards, messed up system. So I know that was a convoluted way of asking this question, but what can be done to fix the problem?
Well, in some, I would say, fields, like take primary care, right? I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm at the top of the food chain, okay, when it comes to doctors getting reimbursed because I'm a proceduralist, right? I'm doing surgeries. I'm doing carpal tunnel releases, wrist fractures, things. Those, for coding purposes, are fairly highly compensated compared to you going to get a sick visit for your strep throat, right?
Sure.
All right. So for those doctors, those primary care doctors, those pediatricians, those, doctors who aren't really doing procedures, they have started really forming these groups called direct primary care. And what they are doing is they are trying to, in essence, weed out that middleman, which is the insurance company, and go directly to the employer. Now, it's usually in large scale, right? So they'll go to Morgan Stanley
Costco
and say,
Yeah,
hey,
right.
Morgan Stanley, you are going to pay $500,000, I'm making these numbers up, $500,000 for all your employees to come see us for your cardiology care. They will get unlimited EKGs. They will get unlimited blood work. They can see the doctors as much as they want, right? Their focus is on health prevention so that the members aren't racking up really expensive ER visits and unnecessary surgeries because you have tried to actually, prevented these problems from happening in the first place. So I would say direct primary care is a way that physicians are trying to take that power back. Again, I think also a bit has to do with perception of who's responsible for paying for healthcare, right? When you are in a car accident and you need to get your bumper fixed, you bring it to the auto mechanic. They say, okay, you need a new bumper. It's $1,000 and you leave with a new bumper, right? When you come into the ER with chest pain, you have no idea what that treatment tree and that, fee tree is going to be. It could be $1,000 ER copay. It could be $100,000 bill for a procedure that was out of network that you had no idea and no control, right? Because you were having a heart attack.
Yeah.
So technically, there are laws in place for healthcare transparency, but you don't know when you just see an EOB, right? That says they charged me $100 for Tylenol. That's insane, right? But you don't see that $100 pays for the janitor to clean the room from the patient who was in the room before you. And it pays for the lights in the hospital. And it pays for the substerile cleaning supply people who wash all the instruments, right? So the hospital can't bill for those things individually, right? It all is baked into these, it's called a master list of codes. And that's how we have designed our healthcare system.
So I think really there's hope. There's hope on the horizon. There's like people trying to solve this problem actively.
Actively, I would say, every doctor who has any entrepreneurial spirit is always looking at ways to make the healthcare system better for the patients, right? We would love it if it worked better for us, but that is really honestly not our priority. Our priority is to help get patients what they need faster, more timely, more, financially feasible. As I said, it brings me no joy to collect $1,000 from a patient. in my office. But if they're able to see me the day of, instead of waiting 3 months to see another in-network person, well, maybe I just prevented a whole ER trip for them, right?
Literally. But that was kind of, so part of our frustration was like, real quick story, in remission now, so nothing to worry about now, but I was diagnosed with cancer last year. And when we first got the initial scans back where there was like, there's something concerning here, my doctor, my primary care was like, don't sit on this. Here's a referral to a specialist. Go see them as soon as you can. So we call the specialist. Their soonest availability was, this was mid-June. Their soonest availability was the second week of August last year. So right around this time. And I was just like, we can't wait that long. What are you talking? Like, my doctor said, don't wait on this. And you're telling me the earliest you can see me is 2 months from now? Like that, there's got to be some urgency here. So we called around to another clinic and said, hey, can we just be seen as a cash patient? And they're like, well, do you have insurance? And we're like, yes, we do have insurance. Like, well, we can't see you as a cash patient because you have insurance. I was like, wait, what? I want to pay you money. Like, I want to pay you money to perform a service. Can't you just do that? It blew my mind. And so they said no. We called another person, end up just lying to them. We're like, no, we don't have insurance. We just want to be seen as a cash patient. Well, they had an appointment like 2 days later. And then once we got the diagnosis from that doctor, then we had to go back to the initial one that was sent that was in network, and then go to them and be like, all right, we got a diagnosis. Can we be seen sooner? And then they gave us a cancellation for like the next day or 2 days later or something like that. So we got seen within a week instead of 2 months, but only because we lied to a third clinic that we called to say that we are a cash patient. We don't have insurance. Please let us pay you to tell me if I have cancer. Like, this is a big deal, and that nobody has any sense of urgency. Nobody, like, what is going on here? This is insane that we have to fight tooth and nail just to be seen and be diagnosed for a big problem. This isn't just like, oh, you might need knee surgery one day. Like, this is like a big problem that we need to deal with now if it happens to be the case. It was just like the most frustrating experience, which is kind of why I asked that question.
Yeah. I mean, that's, my social media handle is called Little Misdiagnosed, and I started actually with telling stories of my time in residency. Usually they're really like fascinating case, or a case where I'm fighting for the patient to get seen or get the treatment that they need. I actually just last night posted a video that is currently viral at almost, 250,000 views in 10 hours, talking about a time that I had to sneak a patient who was an illegal immigrant to get emergency surgery by calling them a John Doe and getting them the care that they need. And these moral ambiguity scenarios happen all the time, every day, to every doctor. And we have to decide, like, what is within our moral code that we can do to help this person. Because for most times we are working against the system, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you that doctor, the oncologist that you wanted to see, he would of course love to see you sooner, but he is tied to a schedule where, like, no, it physically is not possible to fit you in. And again, patients are left to their own. And that's what I discovered, like, on my social channel, which was the impetus for my podcast, The Medical Detectives, and then Feel Better, which is a medical, social network, is that there's a huge gap in both communication between doctors and patients, and then also just with health literacy in general. And if you as a patient don't already speak the language of the doctors, you're so far behind, you're never going to be able to catch up, which is a really scary thing to think about, right? But you figured out, okay, like, the key is I need a diagnosis. Then I can get in to see earlier. But someone else may not have figured that out and just might have accepted, oh, well, that's the next appointment. I guess that's my fate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, which could potentially give that thing, the ability to metastasize and go other areas. And yeah, man, it's a whole messed up system. But I appreciate people like you who are coming on, willing to talk about it, starting practices and entrepreneurial ventures that will help try to fight this, big monster that we've all kind of built together over the last few decades. So, Dr. Erin, I appreciate you coming on the show. I got one more question for you. You are obviously crazy busy, mom, wife, got a private practice, you got a startup. Why TikTok and podcasting? Why spend any time on the content side of things?
When I first got on to TikTok, it was like a personal outlet, right? It was during COVID. I myself had long COVID and I had significantly reduced my hours seeing patients. So I was only seeing like 10 people a week. And I just thought, like, what a shame for all of this knowledge and experience to live inside my brain and not benefit anyone else. So that's when I started just sharing my stories, hoping that maybe people could relate or people, could be educated on some of like the rare diseases that I talked about. And those videos went so viral. But what was really, I think, the most interesting part for me was I was being inundated. I'm not exaggerating, maybe 10,000 emails or direct messages a week from people asking me to share their stories so that one person wouldn't have to go through what they were going through, or one person wouldn't have to feel alone, struggling with the same problem. And that's what I really, really, decided to go all in on this Feel Better platform, because I believe in 2025, it should not be hard to match someone who is going through endometriosis with another person who's going through endometriosis, right? And we have the tools. It's just no one's ever built a patient-centric, health, secure, credible platform where people feel safe to discuss these topics and to help one another.
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. How long has Feel Better been out there now?
So it's actually publicly launching on June 20th. We've
June
been
20th.
in beta since last year. We actually just submitted to the App Store on Monday today. So hopefully all systems go for our launch in 2 weeks. But yeah, the whole point was, listen, I think that the physicians and the licensed experts who are on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Reddit do an amazing job with medical education empowerment. The problem is that the platforms themselves are untrustworthy and they reward misinformation. And to me, medical misinformation is probably the most dangerous public health threat we are facing as a society. All right. And it's not that these platforms couldn't get couldn't rein in medical misinformation. They actively choose not to. And in fact, they reward content that is inaccurate. So the difference with Feel Better is that this is a platform where all of the content creation comes from vetted, credible sources. So that I really see this. What I would love as a long-term vision is if you walked into your doctor's office and you said, hey, I saw this video on Feel Better that was talking about like early detection of testicular cancer. I had these symptoms. Do you think this is something that I should worry about? Right? And the doctor say, oh, yeah, no, those are things that you should worry about, because they themselves know that it came from a trusted source, right? It's different when you show up to your doctor and you say, hey, I saw this on Reddit, or hey, I saw this on Twitter, right? If the source is not credible, then that is not going to help you to have an empowered conversation with your doctor.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. Where can people go to get more from you and what you got going on?
Well, you can always follow me on TikTok at Little Misdiagnosed. And then for anyone who loves listening to podcasts, my podcast is called The Medical Detectives, where we actually share patient stories. I am just like the behind the scenes, doctor expert trying to facilitate the patient sharing their stories. But that is a great place. And then I would love for anyone who has any interest in health education and finding like-minded people who have the same conditions to log on to the app Feel Better. It's FELBETR, and it'll be in the App Store June 20th.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Dr. Nance, I really appreciate you. If you want to go check out some of the stuff she's putting out there, Little Misdiagnosed over on TikTok. And then one more time, the podcast is The Medical Detectives.
The Medical Detectives.
The Medical Detectives podcast. Go check that out if you like listening to podcasts, which you obviously do because you're listening to this right now. So, everybody else, thanks for listening, for tuning in. Remember that money will only solve your money problems. But it is a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you guys next time. Peace out.